Hello, and welcome to the Muses Lab, your destination for all things pleasure as it relates to our human experience, relationships, spirituality, and sexuality. I invite you to join me on this adventure of discovery and hope what you receive inspires you to become the muse of your life's journey. So, without further ado, let's explore. Hello, hello, hello. Try not to start laughing, but I can't help myself. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Muses Lab podcast. I am your host, Siobhan L., and I'm excited because I've been trying to do this podcast with our famed guest. I'm saying she's famed, with our famed guest for I don't know how long, but it has been a while. It is my sissy poo that I have on the interwebs on the podcast. And welcome, ladies, gents, hims, thems, and all of thems. Kailyn Davillier.
Yay!
I'm gonna learn how to do sound. I'm gonna learn how to do sound.
Have a little audience clapping in the background.
You're so amazing.
They do it in Hollywood. They always, audience
do.
has the little light go off. So we'll find the sound. We'll find an appropriate
the little
sound. I'm sure there's one on TikTok or something.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out because I can't host and produce at the same time because I'll start touching buttons and then I'll fuck this whole shit up. So I have to stick to one task. One task, friends.
One task at a time.
One task at a time, friends. One task at a time. I am excited to have you here because we talk about 11 different things all the time. And the various nuances of conversations that we have all center astrology because I think you're a deeper astro babe than I am. I'm like on the surface and you're like in it, right? You're like deep in the throes of astrology. Like that's your thing amongst other divination tools and other spiritual practices that you have. But astrology is like really your thing. So you're always informing me of what's going on. Like I try to keep abreast of what's going on myself and understand it and translate things in my own way. But you always keep me abreast of what's going on as it pertains to how I'm navigating the world, right? So we know astrology is very pop culture now, right? It wasn't before. Right. No one gave a shit about astrology before, but now it's like super pop culture, but not in a way that helps us as systemically displaced, marginalized people navigate capitalistic society, right? You have some people who can show us the connection between the astrological weather and the things and the events that's happening currently, but not necessarily how, as a marginalized person, if you will, how we can use this to survive, right? So that's kind of how it led us to our discussion today. And I'm just going to preface, you got two Leos who are neurospicy. So this conversation is going to take many different shapes and forms. It's going to take many shapes and forms. So follow us if you can. We will try to circle back. We'll try to circle back to the points as much as possible. But follow along on this adventure because this is definitely about to be an adventure. So grab your popcorn, grab your tea, grab your drink, whatever it is. Get your notebook, take some notes because the gems that are going to evolve from this conversation are going to be there. And yeah, that's my housekeeping.
I love that. I love that you have housekeeping too. I think but when there's time for me to talk about, like poetry and astrology and again, all the other things that my modalities this lifetime, I hope to keep myself accountable too with housekeeping when, it's like when you invite somebody to your house, right? That's what being on a podcast episode is about. So, and being a community with people, I think the housekeeping should be for everybody. So thank you for doing the housekeeping. That's nice.
You're welcome. I find setting the tone is important, particularly being neurospicy, because Some people may come and expect
Yeah.
one thing and not realize that you might get a nuance of that, but I'm definitely going to move across the spectrum of various different topics, especially if they like pattern and thread together. So I'm definitely going to move across the spectrum of all those different things, and you may not know that it's going to connect as I am going down the path, but if you fuck with me, if you stay there, if you stay there, if you just follow me and hold steadfast, you'll see it. It's always
I
there.
love it. I love it. It keeps
Yeah.
us accountable as neurodivergent folks. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Yay. Before we started this podcast, we were talking about the current astrological weather, which is wild.
It's a lot.
It, yeah. Mm. Yeah.
A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff of the moment. I was like, let me just check just to make sure before we start that I know what's actually going on today. It's an off day, but a lot of things are on. So that's how it's been feeling. I think this transition to Taurus season and seeing a lot of things coming into Taurus and trying to get comfy, I guess, too, in Taurus. There's just a lot that I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna just rock with it. So
Now, does Taurus, because there's about to be, first of all, there's a lot to be shit ton of planets in Taurus all at once. And for me, this Taurus transit for the first time in a while, at least to my self-awareness and to my acknowledgement, this Taurus transit feels very like juicy and fruitful and vibrant and abundant. Are you feeling the same way with how Taurus is coming in, or is it something slightly
well,
different?
the lens with Taurus is that it's actually in my first house as we speak.
That's right.
So I experience the Venusian energy of Venus through the lens of Taurus. So
Mm-hmm.
it is always, I like to call it with my other fire sign friend, our like pre-birthday, like in the sense of like
Mm-hmm.
it's in
Yeah.
more of like the new year sense, right? So your
Yeah.
solar return is like very special, very, obviously intimate. It's life. It's like the first, day of your new life, your new year. But when you have an ascendant that's different than that sun
Mm-hmm.
sign, you can
Yeah.
experience a little bit of that, kind of energy
Mm-hmm.
with your ascendant when the sun crosses the ascendant. So, and
Yeah.
that's just me. That's just how I experience it. I'm sure other astrologers feel different, but in my astrologer knowledge, from what I know, Taurus season can be it can be volatile, it can be
Mm-hmm.
exciting, it can be a little unnerving, it can be confusing, the chaos can be trying to settle. I sometimes think of
Mm-hmm.
the Tower card, even though it's Mars ruled, when that starts, just because it's spring. So I'm looking for, in my sense, like an old school farmer sense, like I'm looking for some crops to bloom. I'm looking for things to really start popping.
Yeah.
But again, there's this transition from my 12th house where, we still have some things in Aries still being worked through. Mars just came into Aries, for example. So I think Taurus season is different for people who, have it as an ascendant, just because that's how your chart is set up. That's how, the rest of your experience of the year, of the wheel, right,
Yeah.
is going to flow. So, I feel like, again, the sun coming into my first house, I think I feel a little better about Taurus season because I feel like it really does start popping off in May. And again, that
Mm-hmm.
might just because I was, born with a rising in 13 degrees. So like in the center of the 30-degree span. So, I feel like once we get into the middle of a season, or in particular Taurus season, things start to feel a little different. I'm not going to say it feels grounded, because Jupiter and Uranus have been rocking the
You.
first house for me in a long time, especially Uranus. So, there has been a lot of things to look out for in regard to
Yeah.
Taurus energy. But I think Sun Taurus is cute. Venus just got into Taurus. So Venus is, it's like it is homecoming. It's her home
Mm-hmm.
stretch. She's like, hey, like, I feel different here. I feel comfortable here. Just like Mars, is in
Mm-hmm.
the first sign that it rules. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
this is a time personally that is like there's some shift, there's some like embers that I'm able to kind of be like, okay, I'm trying to have some sort of control over this. But Taurus energy, I can say for today, Sun in first house, like, yeah, like I need to clean my bathtub because your girl is going to be taking her baths. Is going to try to. I have a small tub, but I can, if there's a
Hey.
way to squeeze that in literally, I
Yes.
think I
Yes.
think that is the call, right? The
Mm-hmm.
beckoning of Venus being like, hey, can you just be present, please,
Mm-hmm.
for however long these transits are going to be here. So it is a reminder, but a Taurus moon could be experiencing this way differently, like maybe on like a deeper level. Taurus sun could be handling this. I actually have some Taurus suns who I've read for last month. I was like, hey, just so you know, this is all doing the thing, or this is interacting, the Jupiter Uranus stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so as a rising, I think the energy can be a little more like, you kind of have to be like, you have to prepare for this, like this newness in your first house. I think it just hits a little different for risings. And I think that of any rising sign, I think it just hits a little different when that particular sun is, going through your first house. I think things feel like, okay, this is like a second or like a pre-birthday. I got to kind of get my ducks in a row. And again, Venus rules that. And then I look to where my Venus is and I'm like, okay, cool. That's where the homework starts. So it's
Mm.
nothing, if not ever, like you're not going to be doing homework when you're
Right.
experiencing and observing the astrology. But I think the experience is the homework, like really trying to take those nuggets that you can put into your life. Again, as a multi-marginalized person,
Mm.
we can only experience the astrology so much because
Yeah.
there are barriers to that. There are barriers to, this Venus, Venus. It'd be great if I could be like, yeah, I'm about to go to the winery and like,
Mm.
have a nice 5-course dinner and, but Venus rules the money and I don't have it right now like that. So I got to do it on
Facts.
a budget. So me and Venus have
Facts.
to meet in the middle,
Mm.
um, which makes things, a little more creative. You got to get creative sometimes with the
Mm.
astrology. So that's just that is my sermon on Taurus season. Like I love it,
Yeah.
but there has to be ways to like meet in the middle, right? In order to really experience the shifts that are happening.
Yeah. So several things are happening in my mind currently. So one, as per usual, one, thank you for affirming the ascendant birthday because I felt that because I'm a Sag rising. Well, you know that, but I'm a Sag rising for people who are listening.
Mhm.
Um, not that I don't talk about my placements all the fucking time, but for anyone else who's new, I'm a Sag rising. So I feel like Sagittarius season is my second birthday. So thank you for affirming that because I literally feel like that. I feel empowered. I feel emboldened. I'm like, yes, it's my season, even though it's not my season. Like, yes,
Right.
I'm like
Right.
really excited about it. But also it does make me feel like, all right, I need to kind of get myself together. It's an assessment space for me. How am I moving forward in this transit space for the next month or so, for however long, however many weeks I'm going to be in my birth space? It does make me kind of kick into high gear of how I'm navigating the world as the sun is in this space. So yeah, I forgot my degree as far as my ascendant is concerned.
Mhm.
But I might be, I feel like, because I kind of toggle in between my sidereal and my tropical chart often.
Mhm.
And I'm a full-fledged Scorpio rising, so I feel like I might be further down the line with Sag because of the
Right.
deacons.
Right.
So I think I'm like a 20 some around 20 degree, like lower 20 degree Sag ascendant, because I'm
Mhm.
definitely like, I want to say I'm like a third degree Scorpio rising. So I'm like right there.
Right.
So yeah, I do try to get myself together on that. So thank you for affirming that. I wanted to, the two things, the homework part, because I feel like that's super important when people call themselves wanting to get into astrology, because most people talk about sun signs all the time, but
Yeah.
one thing, the key here that you spoke about was not just you being ascendant, but recognizing that Venus is your chart ruler, and that kind of makes a difference with how you navigate your chart. Like Jupiter is my chart ruler, right? Venus
Right.
is your chart ruler, so that gives you a different lens of how you navigate your chart. Like sun sign is what it is, that's your space where you were born, but there are other placements that you have within your chart that influence certain habits, landscapes, how you navigate the world, things of that nature. So the homework piece, one, I wanted to dive a little deeper into, like maybe some, I'm going to call them tactics, and that's my marketing background that's talking right now,
Right.
but steps
Right.
with how you approach homework, right? Could be one or two things. Don't have to give everybody all your secrets, because my Scorpio is gonna kick in secrets. You can't get all the sauce without paying for it, right? Because
Right.
you're not gonna get all the sauce and not pay. But just
Right.
some natural steps that muggles who are really trying to who are interested in astrology, or even the magical folk who want to get a little bit more deeper into astrology homework. And I'm gonna get to the observer part after the homework part, because I don't want to layer too many questions, because I know what this does. So I'm
Right.
gonna stop. I'm gonna stop with the homework. We're gonna do homework, and then we're gonna get to the observer part. But it's
Okay.
here because meds. It's
Right. And I'm taking notes too, because again, like
here.
the world, the world and topic of spirituality, right? It's an umbrella. When we get
Mm-hmm.
to the little strand part in the umbrella about astrology, there is
Yes.
so much. It's so
Mm-hmm.
expansive, and it will always be expansive because more people are
Mm-hmm.
coming to it. It's not as
Yes.
guarded as it used to be, thanks to shout out the Catholic Church. You know, and that's not really a shout out, it's like a point out, because
I was like, that was shade, y'all.
yeah, like just saying. But yeah, it's very, like it is, like it's truly expansive, and it can be confusing for um again a lot of people who are decolonizing themselves from
Yeah.
certain systems that don't um talk about it, or don't want people to know about it anymore.
Yeah.
I will say, um for me, the homework the homework, like, was peaked, or like the interest in pursuing homework, or even like
Mm-hmm.
delving into it,
Yeah.
started from, I think I was when I was 18, and I think nodal returns, which nodal
Mm.
returns have to do with like the nodes in your chart returning. And so I think they occur every 18 years. So I
Mm.
think what I'm getting to is that there are certain markers in your chart where
Yeah.
you're more open to things, like things are shifting, they have to do with eclipses, they have to do with kind of those portals. So for the people who don't really know what that means, like when you're interested in something such as, and again, that is as expansive as astrology, um I think you should start from scratch. You should start from books. You should start from uh people who are writing about it now and people who, are no longer here to talk about it. They've left their literature behind. And I want to make note and share that one of my first few books was a Linda Goodman book. She was a Sun in Aries. She's an amazing, amazing astrology writer. And she wrote, I think I got the Sun Signs book by her and the Love Signs book. And the Love Signs book is like as thick as a Harry Potter book. It's like super thick. And then I found out she wrote poetry, like astrological poetry. And like, I think I have most of those books. I will be taking those books with me wherever I go. But for the most part, like I just delved into books because I could really soak up that information still at that age. And I still can. I'm just a little more particular when it comes to reading about certain things in astrology because I'm soaking it in, but I'm also, again, trying to see the application. And I'm not saying I wasn't applying it at 18, 19, but I was definitely just like, oh my gosh, like I'm learning so much because again, I wasn't raised in astrology. I wasn't raised surrounded by it. I had to figure it out myself. I had to figure out what being a Leo was. And so the homework for me started with books and also looking at my chart. And looking at my natal chart, which is your birth chart, with the information that you have, surrounding your birth. So I'm just lucky to have had all of that information too, because there are people who just, you have to rectify or build their charts from an assumed time they were born or, most people, I think sometimes, I'm not going to say everybody knows where they were born, but for the most part, time is a thing that I don't know if hospitals don't do or choose not to do, whatever. So the homework for me with astrology started with just looking at myself. And I think that then becomes clear to go to application of astrology, because then you can say, okay, well, apply, or if it doesn't apply, let it fly. Like there was a lot that I had to, again, teach myself about myself, looking at myself in that way, in that very intimate way. At an age where I was defining myself. I had just moved back home to New Orleans. So, and had moved and did it basically all on my own. I had completely figured out how a way to manifest that. And I believe that was in my chart. Actually, I think because I've been back home now, I want to say going on 13 years in August. Roughly around my birthday. So there's a lot of signatures that I know going back, looking at that particular time in my life, like the astrology, the application is there, but also like the astrology has proof of it. It backs up those shifts, but the homework has to come into application. And I think everybody who is interested, magical, non-magical, seeking, non-seeking, and even just the critics, the hecklers, the haters, looking at your chart is the first way, I think the first step, because you got to look at you first and you got to look at where these things show up, how they can show up and how they have shown up. Again, looking at your natal chart is your first breath. So you're looking at a specific point in time up until until you're 30. Where you can start looking at your progressions and you can start looking at how your signs have changed, how those transits start changing. Because Leo stellium natally, but at 30, in the middle of my 30 year now, like I have some things that are progressed. And so things look a little different. But again, it has to apply. Like I have to see that in application. And I am. It's weird. It's weird for sure. But I'm learning how to, apply the medicine, and not even just like the medicine due to like dis-ease, but like just looking at how to apply this wisdom that I'm learning in my progress chart. So I think the homework starts there. I think the homework definitely starts with your own chart, having books so that you can start looking at these particular parts of your chart, the particular planets, for, example, and then you can start looking at and reading books that talk about squares and all the terminology, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how people get, I think, rushed off of it. They're like, oh my gosh, there's like all these technical
Yeah.
terms, and
Yeah.
what does this mean? What is sextile? What is conjunct? What
Mm-hmm.
is trine? What is, and that throws people off. And like I said, like it's why there are so many people who are so flagrant about, and they're so vocal about hating astrology or not believing in
Mm-hmm.
it. It's like, that's
Yeah.
fine. I 100%, you do what you do, but like, I know what the homework and the application has brought me 12,
Mm-hmm.
almost 13 years into learning about astrology, and like looking at how it can apply, and um, making some decisions for my best and
Mm-hmm.
brightest days, because I can look and say, okay, this is probably a better suited time to deal with this or handle this or make a move, or you know um just to feel like I do have autonomy over my life, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
supported, versus like seeking that in, again, systems that don't even support my life as a multi marginalized person. So that is why too, I think the homework is so crucial and important for um you know Black and brown and indigenous peoples, because we get to connect to something that supports us more than the systems that are in place right now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's why the homework is good, and that's why the application is good in terms of astrology, because I think we can start taking back a lot of our autonomy. We can start
Yeah.
regaining that sense once we start doing it. But yeah.
Yeah. First of all, that was very thorough, and I appreciate that, because for the muggles in particular, they're going to need that type of simplicity in that. So, one, I want to thank you for your simplicity. And two, I think you touching on the application process, or that part, is important, because I think people start to kind of get into astrology and they see things, or they follow different astrologers. There's 50, 11 different type of astrologers that have different 50, 11 different ways that they are interpreting the planets, and people get caught up in that, and they don't know how to take that information and apply it to their life. So by you
Right.
saying, I look at my chart, and then I look at the chart of the world, like the chart of the day, and see how those two compare to one another, and that then tells me how I'm going to move. that uh, that part is important, because it's more than just, oh, Mercury's retrograde, right?
Right.
Yeah, sure, Mercury's in micro braids, Mercury's Gatorade, whatever, right? It's
Right.
more than that, right? It's, where is Mercury in micro braids in your chart, and how is it in relation to the other planets in your chart? Like,
Right.
that's where the application comes in. And then you go, oh, yeah, this X may be circling back, but the X is circling back because I have this happening and I have this happening, and this may be a test for me to then decide if I want to spin the block, or if I need to continue to keep this door closed. Like, am I entertaining this? And let's say Mercury, because Mercury's currently in Aries. So let's say Mercury's in Aries in my third house. Like, maybe this is my opportunity to say the shit that I was supposed to say when this motherfucker came in my life
Right.
and screwed me over, as opposed
Right.
to cowering in fear or whatever. So maybe this Mercury transit is teaching me how to speak up for myself, and how to take autonomy and authority over myself in my communications, and how I am expressing what I need. So that is the application
Right.
process that Kailyn is talking about. You use what the chart is for the day, or what's happening currently in comparison to your current chart, and then you start to go, let me compare some notes. Oh, this is what's happening currently. Oh, shit. All right, cool. Yeah, maybe I might ask for this promotion now, or maybe I might do some spell work now, or maybe I might need to hack some motherfucker at this point. Like,
Right.
that is how you start to take these tools and utilize them as a person navigating a capitalistic society where there's hella uncertainty and no way for you to just kind of reclaim your time
Yep.
in that regard, because everything is so uncertain and there's so many moving parts and there's collapses that are happening in the background that we don't know about but are currently happening. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things that are occurring in the background. There's a lot of tabs open in the background that we may not be aware of, or are being blinded by the illusions that we are being blinded by the tabs open in the background. So astrology helps kind of bring some clarity with ourselves in relation to those tabs. So the next thing, because I remember meds, meds kicking in, I remember being an observer, because that's as we started to kind of shape what this episode would be about. The observation piece was like very poignant in the conversation, and how you utilizing astrology as an observer, navigating space, almost like remote viewing, like, oh, this is what's happening. Oh, I know why this is happening, because that is happening in the sky. Cool. How has that, particularly in this 13-year span that you've been back home, how has that been your tool of survival, so to speak?
Yeah, survival for sure. I think that you know, day to day, which would probably be like work, having some
Mm-hmm.
sort of job, which kind of sort of relates to 6th and 10th house, just dropping those little tidbits there.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think the 6th and 10th house, um, your role in society, and then like how you execute that. Like, so from the 10th to the 6th has a lot to do with
Mm-hmm.
survival. So, jobs, working, and then working in the service industry, very much 6th house. I would even say somewhat 12th house. But for the most part, I think the scope of showing up at jobs with other people, because I've never worked at a job by myself or worked for myself in that realm yet.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like working for other people, I think
Yeah.
that knowing that a particular planet will be in transit for, let's say, 2 months
Mm-hmm.
is, a good setup. Yeah, let's say, for example, it's like Mercury, since Mercury likes to get,
Mm-hmm.
all the bad rap or whatever. People like to use Mercury as a scapegoat for their lack of communication skills. Um, I just dropping the tea, because I feel like, again, like we're talking about this from a scope and lens of astrology is popular, right? It's
Yeah.
popular to hate and it's popular to be interested in it now, right? It's
Right.
got two things that it's doing,
Mm.
or that people are doing with it. And I think that as someone who observes it from both perspectives, being in workspaces where people are like, oh my gosh, like, I heard Mercury's in Gatorade, Kailyn. Like, oh, you're the go-to person, or oh, the moon, like, the full moon is today, And again, I've worked in restaurants and food and beverage
Mm-hmm.
spaces, so I'm dealing with people
Yeah.
in heightened and
Mm-hmm.
different, just different vibes. Like, people come to eat because they're like on a lunch break from work.
Yeah.
I, I serve people I've served people from the tippy top of their morning, like coffee, like people who
Mm.
are like raging, like Tyrone Biggums for their coffee, to, like I've just people like it's time after time. They're there at 6 a.m. They're there on time. And I've served people till the ends of the night when they're drunk out of their mind. They're wasted. They're on, all kinds of things. So when I look at astrology, not to explain why people are in those situations, I look at it and observe
Mm.
it to, again, the application is, it's a full moon. I'm working at a bar and we have 3 conferences in town, and, or I'm in downtown, or I'm at a location where I'm serving the public. Like, I'm dealing with the
Mm.
actual public. And so there
Yeah.
is this kind of like tool that I'm wielding to be like, okay, like I know that I can respond, you know, professionally and in the best way and polite way possible to keep my job. But there's also this, again, esoteric understanding that I'm also not going to tolerate bullshit just because, you know, for example,
Yes.
like Mercury may be in Aries, you know, which it is currently, but you know, like I'm working and it's trying to get out of its cycle of retrograde. It is still in
Yeah.
post shadow. So I
Yeah.
am being very clear about, hey, you know, this is last call, for example, you know, like it's last call and we're closing up our bar. You have a
Yeah.
tab open. If you want another drink, that's great. Or you want to do a shot, blah, blah, blah. You know, and making sure that I'm communicating effectively a boundary that is going
Yeah.
to have a consequence. I'm going to close out your tab. And if you
Yeah.
leave your tab open, I'm going to apply 20% auto gratuity because I need to make my money and you need to respect that boundary. And so I think, you know, there is this just belief like, no, like you're just doing your job. But it's like the esoteric spiritual aspect of it is learning to implement that all the time. And so it's the time to start setting those standards for oneself. And I think I had a thought that escaped for a second, but I think that, you know, there is strength in putting something into application for the betterment in your growth as a human and how you connect and network with people. So for me, when we're observing, you know, I just say, okay, cool. Like this is something to look out for. It's not
Yeah.
something to be necessarily on the defense for, like afraid. And that's where that's where this Mercury retrograde has really messed people up.
Yeah.
Like believers in the spirituality community, as well
Yeah.
as the people who aren't. Like that's why there's so much clashing because the
Yeah.
misinformation, which again, Mercury he rules over that. Like, so it's just hilarious that there's this figure, and Mercury's not really a he, but you know, there's just this like obsession with this miscommunication about what this planet and this transit is actually trying to get us to apply. And so as a multi-marginalized person, being a Black, queer, disabled person who works in the service industry, there, you know, needs to be better support for us in these spaces, right? I'm still providing a service to you,
Yeah.
but I need it to be clear that, hey, like I'm trying to get up and go. I'm trying to get up and leave. I have a life outside of this job. And so that's where that anti-capitalist kind of perspective takes hold. And that's why, you know, I always tell people that the 10th house is not about a career, because I don't think that we need to be operating in this, oh, you have a career, that's just what you're going to do. You're just going to work and work for the rest of your life. That's what I think the term career in our society now really means. And that's what it connotates, at least.
Yeah.
And the 10th house is just about your role in society, your role to assist society. And so it's just really, it's a part of that. And so I think, you know, like I said, this Mercury discourse gets very, it just gets so misconstrued, in the chaos that ensues, I think, is why people hate Mercury retrograde whenever they hear about it, because they just don't actually know what's going on. And again, most of the planets, except the luminaries, the sun and the moon are luminaries, they don't go retrograde, but everything else goes retrograde at some point. Sometimes once every year, sometimes, you know, consistently throughout the year. Sometimes it's once every couple of years. And so people have to remember all of that, the whole entirety of it, versus, oh my gosh, Mercury happens 3 times a year. Let's, you know, freak out and let's blame things on people. Let's blame things on the outside. And that's the thing too. A lot of people don't even, again, the application, people don't internalize any of what the observation comes from. It's like, observe yourself. Because again, it's about gaining that autonomy back. And I just feel like people lose that when they're, again, that spectrum of spirituality in general, I think people are, should do whatever they feel is comfortable on their spiritual journey. But having
Yeah.
autonomy over these tools is what is going to give people the liberation they're seeking, especially leaving, organized religions. And again, that's all of the organized religions, I think, have constraints that keep people away from astrology, that keep people away from spell work, from meditation. They're just all of these, things that seem so simple and easy, but there are people who literally are taught and brought up not to do that, not to do any of these things, or to seek that outside of what they've been taught. So, that's why I really think just astrology just, again, like, gets a really bad rap, because a lot of people just don't have the mechanics to remember that they have autonomy over their path. And again, when we start with ourselves, when we start with our natal chart, when we start with looking at our progressions, when we start looking at our own charts, then you can come to an astrologer and say, cool, I'm ready for a synastry chart. I'm ready to look at, a relationship. And that can be our relationships, our family relationships, our family dynamics come up in our charts. Our friendships come up in those aspects of astrology, our romantic relationships, and again, more importantly, our role in society. So it can be your jobs, the career paths that you have chosen. All of that stuff comes up there, and we need to be okay with addressing what we have and then apply it to the observation of the other relationships that we encounter in this world, because we have to interact with each other. So
yeah, that I'm also taking notes. I'm also taking notes, and I was like, let me jot this down. So I'm also taking notes. That was just great. That was just really great.
Cool.
I am going to, someone is going to be jealous when I say this, but they're going to get over it. This has got to be one of the smoothest episodes I've ever had. Like, I'm just sitting here, one in awe, but also just like, this is so informative. Like, the level of information that you are giving us here is like amazing. So thank you for that, because this is just like smooth, and I'm just like, wow, oh, that makes sense. Oh, and like things are just clicking for me, and I'm like, oh, this is making sense. I'm gonna say this because I made a note when you were talking about Mercury as, of course, the ruler of information. You know what clicked for me? I was like, oh, that's why 45 is like that, because he's a Gemini. And now he's become like the king of misinformation. I'm like, oh, this is like snow glitchy. And that clicked for me so hard. I don't know if anybody else is going to get it, but that clicked for me so hard. And I'm like, oh, this is making a lot more sense. So that moment clicked for me. Thank you for that. Cause now I know how to navigate. Like, see, we're talking about how to be an observer and how to navigate. Now I know how to navigate. Like when it really starts to click for you, you go, oh, that's what that means. Okay. And now you have more autonomy of how you are experiencing your human experience, because we are souls in human flesh having a human experience. So now you know how to better navigate this space, whatever environment that you're in. It's actually very liberating when things start to click for you and the dots start to connect for you, because you're like, oh, this shit ain't real. Oh, okay. That's why they be saying this shit ain't real, because it's not.
Right.
It's not. This is a game. Thank you for tapping in. Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for tapping into the Muses Lab. I hope you enjoyed this week's adventure. Be sure to like this episode, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and share the wealth with others. Dive deeper into the lab by joining the Pleasure Frequency list at www.themuseslab.com. Receive weekly musings, early access, and exclusive drops, as well as discounts on products and services. Thank you once again for tapping in. Until next time.